Hello everybody, welcome back to EngLang Pro's YouTube channel. My name is Tori and today I'm going to be taking you some common pitfalls that students have when answering short answer questions. So there are a few things that constantly get students every time, and they're really smart and super capable students, but something about the question just gets them and they're not able to correctly answer it. It's horrible and it's really annoying when this happens, especially during practice and you look at the examiner's report and you realize that you were actually completely right, but you didn't read the question properly or something like that. So basically, the whole point of this video is to really hammer home how important it is to read the question properly. But without further ado, this Notion document will be available below, but I've kind of summarized the main points at the start and the end. And I've taken a few key questions from 3 exams and their exam reports, and we'll go through and discuss them here. So first of all, in the 2022 exam report, I've collated some of the key things for short answer questions, and one thing in particular that they emphasized at the top of the examiner's report for the entire exam was that students need to read questions in Section A carefully to ensure all elements have been addressed, particularly in relation to providing the correct number of examples. So this is a common thing, is that there might be, for example, without actually saying the number, the question might say identify a prosodic feature, which just means 1, or it could be something like identify the purposes of this text. Whenever they use a plural like that, even without a number, it means you need to include more than one purpose. So super important that you're aware of this when you write your short answer questions. So first of all, question 1 was to identify a prosodic feature between lines 39 and 42 and explain its function. So this is a text, the Ruller-Kelly Manson text called Cooking on Country from the 2022 exam. And this is an example of that answer. So the increased tempo, the fast-paced utterance, a lot of cousins to feed, allows Ruller to add a parenthetical side note and further detail to the topic of big Aboriginal families that is addressed by NM. So that's a good example of a high-scoring response. The issue that students had with this question is that, first of all, prosodic features are actually really difficult for students. So let's pull up, I have this meta-language table that I'm going to pull up now. So here's a table with all the meta-language on it, and let's have a special look at prosodic features, because this is something that students got wrong quite a lot in the 2022 exam. So prosodic features, they fall under phonetics and phonology, and they are pitch, stress, volume, tempo, and intonation. There are 5 of them. Have a look at them. There are videos on our YouTube channel that explain them under phonetics and phonology. So have a look at that and know your prosodic features well. Know each of these subheadings and subcategorizations well. So what are connected speech processes versus word formation processes or patterning, sentence types and sentence structures. You should be able to differentiate connected when they're asking you about, for example, a connected speech process over when they ask you about paralinguistic features. You should be able to identify factors from each category. The next question I want to talk about, question 2, using an example, identify the verb tense. So students needed to identify the past tense being used, and there were plenty of purposes that you could talk about. But in this question, there's a clear link that they're asking you about how this tense helps achieve a purpose of the text. And this goes back to that overarching idea that they had up here, to read all and ensure all elements have been addressed. And so I think for short answer questions, it's a good idea for you to go through and start with a highlighter and just highlighting the key features that you really need to talk about. So verb tense and how this tense achieves the purpose. A lot of the time students might identify the verb tense and identify purpose, but you need to have a link. Question 3, using appropriate meta-language, discuss how Daniel's utterances are influenced by the situational context of the discourse, refer to 2 different features. And one thing that people don't realize or just got wrong in this question is that it specifically asks about Daniel's utterances. It does not ask about anyone else's utterances. So you need to be careful, especially with people. Every time they ask about people or interlocutors or name someone, you need to make sure that you're talking about the correct person. Also, they might give you a line range. You need to make sure that you're picking something from between those lines. And then they'll give you a number. You need to make sure you get the right number. Another one I wanted to pick out was question 5, how do discourse strategies and features used by Rella, Marlon, and Daniel reflect their relationships with each other? So they've named all 3 interlocutors in this question. That means that you need to fully explore the relationship component. You need to talk about all 3. You should talk about all of the speakers and their relationships with each other. That's how you score really highly. So these 4 questions, I think, really exemplify how this 2022 exam was done poorly in the short answer question section by students who weren't able to fully pick out, number 1, the features that you needed to mention, number 2, how many of each feature you needed to mention, number 3, the links between these features, particularly question 3 that exemplifies that quite well, the tense and the purpose, or question 2, sorry. And number 4, every time they mention a specific person or persons, that you talk about the correct person. All right. Let's talk a bit about the 2023 exam. The 2023 exam, question number 2, discuss the function of 2 different syntactic features used between lines 43 and 70. So this is what I mentioned before, that you need to make sure that your examples that you pick are within the line limits that they give you. Students needed to discuss 2 different and accurate syntactic features or patterning. Many responses accurately discussed ellipsis, sentence fragments, parallelism, and listing. Many students who referred to sentence structures struggled with accuracy. So this is where, again, I'm going to switch over to this table because I want you guys to very carefully look at the difference between sentence structures and sentence types. So be careful that you understand them and also what each sentence structure is. Sentence structures and sentence types are a super common pitfall for students, so know them well. Question number 4. How does the register support 2 social purposes of this text? Include examples with line numbers and appropriate language. So students need to accurately identify the register as being predominantly formal. So this is important as well, that you don't get caught up in formal, informal extremes. Many high-scoring responses accurately identified the register and linked this to at least 2 social purposes of the text. Direct references to how those purposes were supported by the formality was required. Again, direct link between 2 different features. So you were talking about social purposes and you were talking about register. They needed to be relevant to each other. Super, super important that you don't just list one of each. Then, just quickly, one more in 2021. Question number 2 I wanted to talk about. So question 2, identify one example of patterning between lines 6 and 9 using appropriate meta language, blah, blah, blah. So for 2 marks, students needed to identify an example of patterning, including a subsystem, and you did not need to analyze it. So this is another thing, know your command terms. So this said identify, it did not say explain or analyze or discuss. And so when you're asked to identify and you look at the marking scheme, it's 2 marks. That's 1 mark for an example of patterning, and number 2, the second mark, is for the correct subsystem. So it's actually a waste of time to go further than just saying one example of syntactic patterning is listing in line 7. But that's a very, very rare occurrence when this happens, when it's just an identifier. Just something to keep in mind, that you're aware of each and every question marker. What is it called? Command term. So know your command terms well. So to summarize, in a extremely brief fashion, here are some of the things that students have gotten wrong in the past couple of years. Number 1, not addressing every element. So this is where your highlighter comes in handy. Every little piece of meta language. So here it would be patterning and subsystem. Here it would be jargon, social purpose. Here it would be sentence types, functions. And here it would be language feature, socially taboo topics, and that's it. So know your study design terms well and highlight them. make sure the link between them is also super clear. So a lot of the time they'll ask you about one feature and how that is supported by another feature. The link needs to be very clear. How does the register support this social purpose? Correct number of examples. If it's a plural, that means more than one. Super important. Appropriate meta-language. So understand your prosodic features and sentence structures. These are super common that students get this wrong. Sentence types, we've got a video up. Please have a look at, because people get that wrong a lot as well, particularly when we have declaratives just with an exclamation mark. An exclamation mark or a question mark does not necessarily make that sentence an exclamative or an interrogative. They could be declaratives just with certain intonations. So have a look at that video, please. Answer all parts of the question. So when you need to talk about the relationship between different speakers, you need to talk about every speaker, and answer only the question. So when the question specifically states one speaker, for example, you need to focus solely on that speaker. Same thing with a line limit. If you're told to talk about something within line 6 and 9, you shouldn't be telling me anything about line 10. I don't care. So with that being said, please keep all of this in mind when you're going into your short answer questions. Just read the question over and over. That's the main takeaway from this. Read the question, read it very carefully, and make sure you answer it properly. So with that, I hope this has been a little bit helpful, a nice and quick one, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.